Well, you did not have homework for the first time in a long time, and and so I want to review with you some things that you would have had in homework had I assigned homework over the 3-day weekend. We've been working a lot with points on the Cartesian plane, and we know that between 2 points you can draw how many straight lines, class? One, and only one straight line. And so the line between the points we call a line segment. So I've got a couple points here. Lines are point G and point B. And of course they define a line segment, GB. And we can find the length of that line segment, the slope of that line segment, the midpoint, the equation, all from just those 2 points. What equation do I use to find the length of a line segment? Brandon? This is why I got to give you homework. So give you homework. Length. Yeah, length. Yeah, what equation do I use?
D equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus x. I mean y2 minus x1 squared. y1. Yeah. I messed it up. Just a little bit.
All right, there we go. X2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Good. So if we wanted to find the length of GB, okay, we would start by finding the change in the x, right? We'd take x2 minus x1, and what would we get, anybody? 8 or negative 8, which when you square it gives you 64, right? Anybody else can jump in here. On the y's, we take y2 minus y1, we get 6 or negative 6. Either way you square it, you get 36. We'll add those to get the square root of 100, and if it didn't come out evenly, we would either leave it or we would reduce it. But the square root of 100 comes out evenly, class. 10, and so we would say the length of segment GB is 10 units. 10 units long. What about slope? What formula do we use to find slope, Abby?
M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
There we go, the rise over the run. Remember, the y's on the top. So looking at the y values, and here the order matters. How do we want to set up our y2 minus y1, Abby?
2 minus negative 4.
Good, 2 minus negative 4, 2 plus 4 would give me a numerator or antecedent of 6. But because she started with the 2, we've got to start with the negative 5 as the corresponding x value. Minus 3 class gives us negative 8. We can reduce that slope down, Abby, to?
Negative 3/4.
Negative 3/4. What about the midpoint? What formula do we use for that, Audrey?
M equals I know it's in the parentheses.
All right, because it's a point, right, with the comma separating. How do I find the abscissa and the ordinate of the midpoint?
x2 plus x1 over 2.
Good, we're going to average the x values and then also
y2 plus y1 over 2.
Now the way I've always taught is x1 plus x2, but remember addition's commutative. So x2 plus x1, x1 plus x2, as long as you add them and then divide by 2, we're good. So, Audrey, if I add the x values, what do I get?
Negative 8.
Well, that would be if I subtracted them.
Negative 2.
Negative 2, and then I cut that in half.
Negative 1.
And then what about the y values? I add those, Michael, to get?
Negative 2.
And cut that in half to get?
Negative 1.
All right, so negative 1 there in the third quadrant is my midpoint. And then for the equation, we said our equations are going to be in what form, what look will our equations have? Genesis? What form will our equations, for our linear equations, be in? Well, not y-intercept form, but slope-intercept form. It does use the y-intercept, slope-intercept form. And as we solve the equation, let's start with that. It's not really a formula, but the form. Let's start with that. And of course, in order to find the equation of a line, then, class, we've got to know the slope, which fortunately we do know. We already know the slope is negative 3/4. We don't yet know the y-intercept. These are the 2 key pieces. If you know the slope and you know the y-intercept, you know the equation, remember. Well, we know the slope, but to find the y-intercept, I'm going to have to plug in for the other letters x and y. Genesis, what should I plug in for x and for y? Good, either 3 and negative 4, or negative 5 and 2, or technically If you want to gamble that you did it right, you could even use the midpoint, because all you need is a point somewhere in the line, right? But I wouldn't gamble that. I would go back to one of the original points, and you said you wanted to use 3 and -4, so in for the y, Genesis, we'll put a, and in for the x, we'll plug in the 3. And I'm going to put the 3 over 1 so I can see that fractional look a little bit more clearly. At this point, it's just a matter of simplifying. So Genesis, let's keep on rolling here. Let's multiply our fractions together. 9 9/4 plus b. And my suggestion was that you get to this point, you got this big ugly ugly fraction anyway in there. Let's get rid of it by multiplying everything by the LCD. So if we multiply everything by 4, we don't necessarily have to show that step. We can just do it, but what do we get?
6, -16, -9, 4 plus 4.
There we go. And of course, then we'll move the -9 over as a +9 to get 4. Help, class? -7. We're shaking off the 3-day weekend rust is equal to the 4b. And then finally, we'll finish getting a b by itself by dividing away the 4. Of course, you can use a calculator if that 3-day rust is hitting you too hard. So I've got my slope. I've got my y-intercept. So I can put it all together to come up with what equation, Michael?
Y equals -3/4 x plus -7/4.
Good, or we'll just say -7/4 instead of plus -7/4 because I'm too lazy for that. And there we go, there's our equation. All of this stuff we talked about last week. Questions on any of these, you say, can I have more practice on any one of those 4 topics? Anyone need more practice with any of those 4? Do you feel like, no, now that we've reviewed, I think I'm good? How many say, I'm good, I think I got this? How many say, I could really use more practice on one of these? All right, which one or ones? All of them?
Just a little more on all of them.
A little more? Okay, let's do one more of these. All right. At your seats. Let's suppose we have a random point. And let's suppose it's, we'll just call it point A. And suppose it is, I don't know, 1, 6. And suppose you've got another point, let's go with S. And let's suppose it is -5, 2. I want you to find the length of AS, find the midpoint of AS, find the slope, and then finally the equation of AS. Looks like most of us are about done. How many went 4 for 4? You got all of them. All right, Michael?
I just messed up getting the equation.
All right, do you see what you did or what you should have did? Okay, and then Abby, you're the one who requested it. You feel much more confident now that we've done it a second time?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Any questions at all then? Or we feel like we've got these? All right, then the other thing that I wanted to look at with you today was something I previewed a little bit in the last lesson, at the end of the lesson. This was this parallel perpendicular thing. Remember, when we say in this class the word parallel, class, we need to think 2 words. Same slope. When I say perpendicular, we need to think 3 words. Negative reciprocal slopes. So let's suppose, then let's build on this idea of parallel, perpendicular, and kind of also with what we were doing with finding equations of lines. I want you to find, actually we're going to do this first one together, but I want to find the equation of the line, not a line, but the line, that passes through the point 0, 3 and is parallel to y minus 2x equals 2. You're going to jot that down. You can abbreviate as needed on your paper. Again, this symbol is not an 11, it's a parallel symbol. But find the equation of the line through 0, 3 that is parallel to y minus 2x equals 2. Again, your first thing to take care of is to extrapolate what all of that part means. When it says parallel to y equals 2x minus 2, well, again, that means same slope. So begs the question, what is the slope of this equation? Well, what would I need to do, Kendall, to find the slope of the equation that they gave me? Word for word what I was thinking. Put it in slope-intercept form. So what does this equation become?
Y equals 2x plus 2.
And therefore, what is the slope of their equation?
2.
2. So what is the slope of my equation?
2.
Also 2, because same slope. And now we're doing what we did a couple lessons ago, right? We've got a point, we've got a slope. We just need to plug it into what, Kendall?
The slope-intercept.
Slope-intercept form. So let's start with
3 equals 2 times root plus b.
There we go. Y equals mx plus b, where there's your x and there's your y. Of course, 0 times 2 is 0, so we just get b equals 3. I guess that makes sense because 0, 3 is on the y-axis. And if the equation goes through that point, this must be the y-intercept. So we already knew 3 would be the y-intercept. If I know the slope, and of course we know the y-intercept, what's the equation of my line?
Y equals 2x plus 3.
There we go. Do we remember doing this on Friday in our last lesson? All right. Now, let's suppose, though, we make one little change here. Instead of saying parallel, suppose we say perpendicular. Well, that's going to change some things here because that means while their slope may be 2, my slope is no longer 2, Maddie. My slope is negative 1/2, the negative reciprocal of the slope of the given line. So, same thing as before though. I've got this point, I've got this slope. Let's find the equation of the line, Maddie.
You start off with this slope-intercept form.
Okay.
Y equals mx plus 2. And then you put in the numbers. So 3 equals negative 1/2 times 0 plus b.
And once again, as happened last time,
3 equals b.
yeah, the whole 0 stuff just cancels. I just get b equals 3. And so what's the equation of the perpendicular?
Y equals 2 of negative 1/2 plus 3.
X. There we go. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. And again, the only reason these happen to have the same y-intercept is because the point they gave us was the y-intercept already. All right? Let's change it up now where instead of being given a point on the y-axis, instead of being given the y-intercept essentially, we have to find it with a little bit more math involved. So let's suppose now the point that the lines go through, and let's start again with a parallel, goes through the point 1, 1. parallel to 3x minus y equals 9. Now that line doesn't go through 1, 1. But there's a line that's parallel that has to go through that point because through a point, 1 and only 1, straight line may be drawn parallel to given line. I throw that out there for my geometry grads. All right, so what do we do here, Michael?
You put it in slope-intercept form.
Okay.
Y equals 3x minus 9.
Good. I'm kind of picturing 3x minus 9 equals y, but I like that he said it in the order we're used to seeing it here. All right, which means their line has a slope of 3. So my line has a slope of 3. Parallel, same slope. Now what?
You put it in slope-intercept form.
Right?
1 equals 1 times 3. Or 3 times 1.
Technically, yeah. Plus b.
You multiply the 3 and the 1 to get 3, and you move it over, and you get negative 2.
All right, so what's the equation of the parallel through this point, parallel to that line?
Y equals 3x minus 2.
All right, y'all still following along? All right, Audrey, once again, we're going to change it just a little bit and find the equation of the perpendicular. That does not change the slope of the given line, but that does change the slope of my line.
It's negative 1/3.
All right, so now as we find the equation,
1 equals 1 times negative 1/3 plus b. And then you multiply to get negative 1/3. And then you can add it to the other side to get 4/3.
good, 1 1/3 or 4/3, so what's my equation?
Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 4/3.
And again, if you had 1 1/3, that's not a problem. I do prefer the improper fraction in algebra, but for plotting's sake, 1 1/3 might be easier. I like the 4/3 in the equation form better. We all still keeping up. All right, let me have you do one of these on your own now. And we'll change the point, we'll change the equation. Go ahead and do both of them, parallel and then perpendicular. This time the point you're going to use is the point 4, negative 1. And the equation is x plus 2y equals 8. X plus 2y equals 8. I already had these two equations for the parallel and the perpendicular. Double checking. Okay, questions, comments? Questions, comments? Going once on questions. Go. I heard it. Oh, Simon, you figured it out? All right, what was the problem?
I put the x, when I divide everything by 2, I put the 2 under the negative x.
Okay. Right here?
No,
Right here. Oh, you wrote it as negative x halves.
Yes.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
So your slope, that it made you misread the slope and you said negative 2? Gotcha. Okay. And so you had negative 2 and positive a half, which would mess everything up. Yeah, just be careful there. And that's why, again, normally, yes, if I have a negative x and I divide it by 2, I'm going to leave it like this, only in slope-intercept form. So I put the 1/2 before the x, just so I can see it separate and distinct from the x value. Let's do just a little bit more practice for this. Turn your books to page 168. Page 168, I want you to do numbers 29 and 33. Mostly we got it. Still maybe a little bit of struggle in there. I want to make sure we're good to go. Read directions carefully for 29 and 33. Practicing with parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, Abby? And there. Made me think you're having a headache or something. I was like, man, I hate to think my class causes headaches.
I feel headache this time.
I'm sorry?
I feel headache this time.
Would say it's only a flesh wound, but it's not. So. As you finish, check your answers, see how you did. Any questions? 29 or 33? Looks like some of us still finishing, that's okay. For those who are finished, again, if you're not finished and you're watching on YouTube, just pause me. For those in the classroom who can't, the book, if you'll notice the directions, notice it says write the answer in standard form. Standard form is something x plus something y equals something, okay, where there's no fractions. So if we wanted to make this standard form, and I'm not going to require that, we do slope-intercept form in this class, but if we wanted to do standard form, it'd be pretty easy. What would I multiply first of all to knock out the fractions? 13. Multiply everything by 13, we get 13y equals 6x minus 3. So far so easy? And then we'll slide the 6x over. That's a negative 6x plus 13y equals negative 3. And then last of all, to make sure we have standard form, we never lead with a negative. So the standard form answer would be 6x minus 13y equals a positive 3. It's the same thing. It just looks nicer because there's no fractions. And they knew you get some really annoying looking answers. But again, for our purposes in this class, this is how we'll leave the answer. But just so you see standard form, in case you see something like that on standardized testing, that's what they're talking about, is a fraction-free answer, which has the x's and y's listed first, and then some random number at the end. Questions on that? So if we came over here, what would I do to get standard form for starters, class? Multiply a 2 to get
2
and then here, just by bringing the negative 11x to the beginning, getting a positive 11x, I don't even have to change any signs this time. Boom, there's the standard form equation the book was looking for. Does that make sense on the standard form thing? Any questions? Again, it's easier to look at because people don't like seeing fractions. Slope-intercept form, you usually end up seeing fractions. But it's one more step, and I'm lazy, so I don't normally do it. But, you know. Questions? How many got both 29 and 33 right? All right, let's do a couple more. Let's do 30 and 34. Let's do 30 and 34. I'll tell you what, if you finish early, go ahead and put it in standard form. Curious to see if you could do it. Again, not that I'll ask you to on quizzes or tests, but just curious to see how quickly we catch on to things. And if I lost you on the standard form thing, don't sweat it. They aren't real big on numbers that work out evenly, are they? get the correct slope-intercept form equations for these two? All right, anyone also get the standard form equation as well? Okay, several of you did. Questions at all on this? If you feel like we got this, no issues, we could take on a quiz on it right now, would be great. Audrey has a scared look on her face. All right, Genesis looks suspicious. Any questions? How many say, you give me a quiz right now, I'd be fine? How many say, I'm mildly terrified of the prospect of a quiz right now? I'd like a little bit more practice. How many don't know which hand to raise? Either you feel good or you don't. Do we feel good? Is there something that troubles us? I mean, here's, you got a chance. Anything that you're like, oh, I'm still a little iffy on blank.
If there's a quiz or not.
You're iffy on if there's a quiz or not. I can understand that. That makes me iffy too. All right. Anyone else have something specific, maybe math related, that you have you feel iffy on?
Why are we here?
To glorify and honor God, of course, by doing our best in math class. All right, clear desk except for a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. Blank sheet of paper and a pencil. Everything else away. Brecken's back there saying, please ask a question, please ask a question. Ah, nobody asked a question. You can always pause and replay. Delay it a little bit, right? What's the old saying, that which does not kill me only delays the inevitable? Anyway, that's an encouraging thought. First and last name of the top of your paper along with today's date, which is 1/18/22. First and last name, 1/18/22. You wait till after the Patriots get destroyed to get the Patriots hoodie. Maybe they were on clearance now that they got destroyed. I'm picking on you. Only because you cheer for the Patriots. I hate the Patriots. Dude, a lot of teams got destroyed in the playoffs. Cowboys looked awful. No. Eagles looked terrible.
Did you see that last play?
Well,
Dak Prescott fumbled the ball.
Yeah, poor clock management all around. A lot of that's up the coach, to be honest. Yeah, I tell you. All right, this is quiz 22. Quiz 22. Let's take a look at the quiz together here. Number 1 it asks you for a formula. Number 4 asks you to fill in something. Number 2 and number 3, don't overthink that, okay? Really, truly, don't overthink that. 5 and 6, you're going to find the equation of the line. I've given you a slope, I've given you a point. 7 and 8, I've given you 2 points in each case. Find the equation. And then 9 and 10, I've given you a point and another line, either parallel or perpendicular. Find those equations. I use that quiz copy as a cover sheet. I'm going to write the homework on the board and end the video here. So video students, you can go and pause it, and you'll have the homework in a moment.